The autistic Australian sociologist Judy Springer coined the term neurodiversity to make a revolutionary point that everyone's brain develops differently. So rather than focus on cognitive differences, we should in fact foster everyone's capacity for seeing the world in a new way. Hello and welcome to Neurodiversity with Dr. Banerjee, brought to you by Landmark College, the college of choice for students who learn differently. Today, we turn our attention to the cultural and social issues around neurodiversity, and helping us navigate our way through it all is, of course, Dr. Manju Banerjee, Landmark College Learning Disabilities and Neurodiversity Ambassador at Large. And she's here with me now. Hi there, Dr. Banerjee. Super having you on.
Hello, Vijaya. It's lovely to be here on with you.
Yes, absolutely. So, Dr. Banerjee, talking about stigma, despite the awareness of neurodiversity, the stigma and shame still persists for many neurodiverse individuals. So, could you explain the societal stigma around neurodiversity?
Absolutely. Societal stigma around neurodiversity is something neurodiverse individuals deal with every day of their lives. Uh, but before we go further into what is societal stigma around neurodiversity, let's just get an understanding of what exactly is stigma.
Yeah.
Because we often hear words like stigma, discrimination, and bias, so on. But let's focus on stigma for our session today.
Mm-hmm.
And in modern usage, stigma is an attribute that belongs to you, your attribute, that the rest of society looks at unfavorably. Now, whether that attribute is color, whether it is age, whether it is weight, whether it is being neurodiverse, all varies and depends on how society looks at that. But what stigma does is makes the person feel less than, less valued, less important, or in some way, it results in what I would call a loss of status in society when you're stigmatized. I'll give you an example. I mean, very simple example. New kid that comes into the classroom in a school, and nobody talks to you. You're being stigmatized as that new kid who nobody wants to fraternize with.
Yes.
So stigma is essentially a negative attitude or discrimination against someone based on a distinguishing characteristic or attribute. And the other point I want to highlight is it is socially constructed. If nobody looked at neurodiversity negatively, then it wouldn't be a negative attribute and there wouldn't be stigma attached to it.
That's
but
right.
Unfortunately, that is not the case where we are today. Much has improved.
But still ways to go, miles to go before you sleep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. So tell me more about this. So from the societal point of view, how is it affecting, of course, the neurodiverse, but also the people around? What should we be considering about it?
Yeah. So let me start with describing neurodiversity and stigma from the perspective of the individual. How does the individual feel to be stigmatized?
Yes.
Because often the rest of society are not even aware of the stigmatizing effect on the individual. And what we see is that neurodiverse individuals can often feel very alone. They can feel ostracized. But the big one I want to kind of emphasize is be afraid, feel afraid. When you're afraid of something, you don't take positive risks, like asking questions in class, advocating for yourself. The other thing that happens when you're afraid is you spend a lot of mental energy trying to hide what you perceive is that negative attribute. Weakness. So you are, often we see the class clown or someone kind of, becoming overtly verbal, etc. But that cover-up strategies, which are not beneficial in the long run. Sometimes students can act very defiant, So all of these are because you're trying to cover up the stigmatizing effects of neurodiversity.
That's right.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, go ahead. Yeah, you were
No, I was just
finishing
going
a
to
sentence.
say, in addition to being afraid and the implications of being afraid, is that it diminishes your self-esteem and self-worth.
Self-worth, yeah.
Yeah. And when you, so we know the chain reaction, the domino reaction of having lower self-esteem and self-worth. You don't take initiatives, you don't speak up, you don't take on any leadership roles. So these students remain on the margins of society because of this effect of stigma.
Very true. Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. Folks, if you've just joined us, you're listening to Neurodiversity with Dr. Banerjee. We're delving into the cultural and social issues around neurodiversity, the stigma around it, how it impacts and impinges on the lives of the neurodiverse. And of course, this program is brought to you by Landmark College, providing academic support, executive function coaching, and student life transition to college skills training for neurodiverse learners. It's all at Landmark College. They're in Putney, Vermont, but they're also in the California Bay Area. You can find out more about them at landmark.edu or landmark.edu/success center about the Success Center in San Mateo. You can also call them at 408-505-4170. So, Dr. Banerjee, you put this all very well, and I must say that neurodiversity is not visible like skin color or like age or like weight or whatever are those factors that cause that stigma. So how does one really know who is neurodiverse, and how does the stigma then play out in such cases?
Yeah, what a great question, Vijaya.
Mhm, mhm,
So yes, neurodiversity is not written on your forehead. Uh, and as you said, it is not overt or visible. But there are many ways in our traditional educational system
mhm.
that neurodiverse students can be outed, if you will. And I'll give you a simple example.
Yeah.
Uh, when a teacher gives out grades in a class, and a neurodiverse student doesn't get the grades that their peers around them are getting, you get your paper back with a C minus written in red ink on the corner of your paper.
Mm,
You are getting, and that happens again and again, you're getting outed as the not so smart student in the class.
yeah.
Another way that neurodiverse students can have challenges and be outed, again, I don't like using that word necessarily, but that's
Mm,
how they can be identified,
yeah.
is in an online course where students are asked to write something about themselves, to introduce themselves.
Mhm,
And the teacher doesn't give any guidelines. So some students will write a long, rambling description of who they are and what
mhm,
they do, and the writing might have spelling errors and grammatical errors, and the rest of the class, as they're reading this, and I know this happened in college on one of my online classes,
yeah.
nobody wanted this particular student in their team because they figured, oh, her writing is not good, yet
Uh-huh.
her ideas were terrific.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, it's
So subtle and not so subtle,
absolutely.
clues there. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. In this case, as they say, don't judge a book by its cover.
Mm-hmm.
That is so true. Don't judge the student by how they are writing in
Yeah.
an introduction in an online course or the grade they might have received without accommodations. Later, I'll
Mm,
talk about accommodations. Um, but unfortunately, that does happen. And that's how neurodiverse students have to deal with some of their challenges in the traditional educational system.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, that really outlines it for folks, because how does stigma really, reflect in the neurodiverse community, right? It could be so many ways right there.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So, folks, again, if you've just joined us, you've tuned into Radio Zindagi 1550 AM. You're listening to Neurodiversity with Dr. Banerjee, brought to you by Landmark College, offering a vibrant and personalized educational experience for students with learning disabilities through a variety of majors, online and summer programs, and supporting the transition at college as well. Landmark College is based in Vermont and has a success center right here in the California Bay Area in San Mateo. You can check them out at landmark.edu/success center or call them today at 408-505-4170. So, Dr. Banerjee, could you share any research that really highlights this influence of stigma in our community around neurodiversity?
Yeah, there's some very exciting research, and I'll share one that I was also involved with some of my colleagues at Landmark College and a professor from Yale University. But before I get to that, very interesting surveys, a series of surveys done by the American College Health Association. And what they were able to show is that when post-secondary education create these programs for destigmatizing, students who learn differently, then there was a clear association between those programs and these college students seeking out more counseling and other mental health resources that were available in college. And that led to greater retention of these students in college.
I see.
So clearly, the research shows that destigmatizing efforts have positive consequences. Now, the study I was telling you about, this was with my colleague Lucy Stamp from Landmark College and Franklin Brown from Yale University. And we followed 12 students at Landmark who had above average IQ. So they were in the plus average, beyond average, plus average range in terms of their cognitive profile. And we asked them about the impact of, they were all students with ADHD, and we asked them about what was the impact of ADHD in terms of your interactions with dealing with others and transitioning to college. We also asked them, what do they think and how does society view ADHD? And lastly, what interventions either helped them or didn't help them during their post-secondary education career. So I won't go into all the details of the findings.
Just the highlights.
Yes. What was particularly interesting is uniformly, the students tended to blame themselves. And they talked of the shame and stigma of having a label like ADHD. So clearly, stigma has an impact, and it has impact at a very personal level. Yes. So the study, although it was small, and I wouldn't recommend necessarily generalizing, but these were high-functioning students who were at Landmark College, and they were college students, so they have obviously experienced school, and now they're in post-secondary education, but they hadn't shaken off the feeling of stigma and shame that was associated with being neurodiverse. One more study, very interesting.
So very deep-rooted sort of ramifications on that, right? Stigma, like you said, blaming yourself and really not getting over that.
Absolutely. So then another more recent study done in 2022 by Turnock and others, and this was with stigma associated with autism. And they were able to show that it was not only ignorance or lack of understanding of society around autism, but also when you pair that with visible characteristics of autism, the stigma sharpens and it's deeper. So if it's not only invisible, but it can also be visible characteristics associated with neurodiversity that really have that stigmatizing effect and all the other consequences of it. So
that is really
lots of studies
Lots of studies on this, but I'm glad at least they're talking about it and bringing that to the fore so that people are aware of it, right? And they can change their response to it, or be more aware of how they're doing it.
Absolutely.
So Yeah, so folks, again, I'm RJ Vijaya talking with Dr. Manju Banerjee. She's Landmark College Learning Disabilities and Neurodiversity Ambassador at Large, and you're listening to this presentation. We're talking about stigma around neurodiversity. It's brought to you by Landmark College, providing personalized assistance not found at most traditional colleges, and they offer degree programs for students and professional training for educators as well, and that's at landmark.edu. You can check them out. Check out the Success Center right here in the Bay Area at 408-505-4170. Call them, or again visit landmark.edu/success center. So, Dr. Banerjee, what then are some of those strategies to address the stigma around neurodiverse individuals?
Yeah, yeah. Let me repeat something that I said before.
Mm-hmm.
Stigma is a socially created construct.
Mm.
So obviously, societal beliefs around neurodiversity need to be changed.
Yes.
And they're changing, but the change is still slow. So what we really need to focus on is dispelling some of the myths around neurodiversity.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what people often tend to do is when they have an experience with one individual who is specifically neurodiverse, then they tend to generalize
Yeah.
that to all other individuals. And that way the myth gets perpetuated. For example, if you're a teacher and you have a difficult experience with one student
Mm.
identified as having autism, uh, many teachers will then just say, I don't want any more students with autism in my class. They will often say that actually not so much about autism, but about ADHD.
Mm.
Is the research on that is also very interesting.
I see.
So dispelling some of these myths is important. Highlighting the contributions that the students make. I
Yeah.
think another big part of dispelling the myth around neurodiversity is not to focus so much on these traditional markers like grades and your rank in the classroom, etc.,
Mm.
but also focusing on other attributes,
Yes.
helpfulness, being friendly, being
Mm-hmm.
polite. I mean, in life, as we know as adults, these are very important traits.
Important skills, yeah, of course, to get through life. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So
Mm-hmm.
both educators and parents can put, if they can put more weight on some of these attributes, they will be pushing the needle further away from the stigmatizing effect of neurodiversity. I'll give
Yeah.
you a couple more examples.
Yeah. And also with if your examples, if you can also focus a little bit on South Asian community, you can
Yes,
tend
yes,
they tend to
coming to
sort of
that.
also have that.
Coming to just that.
Yeah.
So one of the things in the Southeast Asian communities is communication between child or teenager and parent is very stereotypical.
Mm.
They don't often talk about some difficult subjects like stigma
Yeah.
around neurodiversity or learning differences. So it's really important to start that conversation. I'll give you an example. One of my colleagues who is neurodiverse himself, they just found out that his granddaughter is also like him. He has a learning disability. Granddaughter has a learning disability. And what they did in the family was to celebrate that
Ah,
this is a trait to celebrate. Uh,
wow.
yes, and granddaughter was so excited to learn about how grandfather has navigated his career.
That's a
And
total shift, I would say, in
yes,
paradigm shift. Mm-hmm.
yes, exactly. So to celebrate the strengths that your child brings, equally important is
Yeah.
not to trivialize the challenges of being neurodiverse,
Mm-hmm.
ADHD or LD. It's very real. And many teachers and particularly Southeast Asian parents will say, oh, I don't believe in that. You just
Yeah.
have to work hard and
Yeah.
you just have to put in the effort. And what do they fall back on? They fall back on more tutoring or helping the child with their
Yes.
homework.
Mm-hmm.
And as parents, we're not trained.
Yeah. They're
Apply.
constantly in denial.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
one of the very concrete examples that I would offer is discuss if your child has been evaluated and has a documentation of their disability, it- discuss that with your child, obviously in an age-appropriate manner. But talk about the strengths and the areas of challenge. The documentation will talk about accommodations. The documentation will talk about what their strengths are and how to compensate for their weaknesses. And the schools are, at least the public schools for sure, are mandated to support the areas of challenge and scaffold those areas of challenge. Open communication, not trivializing it, relying on evidence-based practices, and not, especially to my Asian, Southeast Asian people in the audience. More tutoring and helping with homework really isn't the best path as a strategy. And to address stigma, find ways to boost your child's self-esteem, even if it is they're friendly, as I said, they're kind, they help around the house. Don't take these for granted. In our households, we often take these things for granted. And please don't take for granted that your child has to do well academically. That is
that's
only
the
one
other.
dimension. It's only one dimension of who we are. We have so many more dimensions, and those dimensions are important as we enter the world of
Yes,
work.
they tend to focus on academics to the exclusion of everything else, and that's
Absolutely.
not right.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Any other suggestions that I mean, open communication is, of course, one way. Anything else that folks can do to address this
Yeah.
stigma?
Yes. So, sometimes there are other family members who have had challenges during their grade school years or even their college years, but they are doing fine now. They're running their own business. Uncle so and so has a company. Some aunt has a great online cooking show, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And talk in the family about some challenges that aunts, cousins, uncles might have had growing up. When we were growing up, we didn't have the word neurodiversity. And
Yes.
we in the Asian community are not familiar with that. But they might be familiar with some of the difficulties. So and so was always running around, didn't want to sit down and do his homework, but look where they are now.
Look at him now.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
I don't mean to glorify
Yes.
this because LD, ADHD are serious issues.
Yes.
You need to be in an educational environment like Landmark College that can really support you and boost your self-esteem.
Yeah.
But parents can find out more information about these schools and colleges that have specific programs for neurodiverse individuals to start that communication and to
Yes.
destigmatize the the
Yeah.
neurodiversity in the mind of their child.
Yes, actually, we're so fortunate to have a college that's dedicated to, really empowering the neurodiverse, like Landmark College. So that is such an excellent thing right there, right?
Absolutely. I'll put in a little plug for Landmark College. One
Please do.
real quick
Yeah.
is that, and we hear this so often at our graduation ceremony. And I remember my first year at Landmark College, one of the faculty members asked me, "Do you have your box of tissues with you?" When I was walking down for the graduation, and I said,
Yeah.
"Why do I need tissues?" He said, "You will need them." And I know now why, because the commentary from the students and the speeches from the students are so moving. And the one thing that sticks out in my mind, which is what Landmark does so well, is that they don't give up on the
Wow.
student. When society gives up and society imposes all these stigmas, places like Landmark and other schools and colleges, the faculty, especially the advisors, they don't give up. And that's what starts the reversal process of building up the students' self-esteem. Because the smartness is still there.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
just you need to give them that opportunity to be able to demonstrate what they can do in a
Yes.
different way.
thrive and to flower and, to just come out of all of that.
Exactly.
And they know they have landmark there to really hold them or scaffold them, as you always like to say. So, thank you so much, Dr. Banerjee. That's another eye opening conversation here that we've had. And it's enabling us to really introspect, become aware of that. The kind of damaging impact that stigma has on neurodiverse individuals sets them back as they try to make their way through life. So it's imperative that we shift our perspective and see all students as capable learners with unique strengths and potential. So thank you so much. And folks, there you have it. Landmark College is on hand to help you every step of the way. If you are a neurodiverse student or the parent of one, visit landmark.edu/success center to learn more or call them today at 408-505-4170. And if you have questions on any aspect of neurodiversity for Dr. Banerjee, then send them my way at vijaya@radiozindagi.com. That's VIJAYA at radiozindagi.com. And join us every Thursday, 3:30 p.m. for another enlightening edition of Neurodiversity with Dr. Banerjee, brought to you by Landmark College. I'm RJ Vijaya. For now, keep listening to Radio Zindagi. Ji Eja.